This is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the Source Capital Group 2016 Disruptive Growth and Healthcare Conference in New York City. With me right now is Ian Massey from StemCells Inc. The symbol is STEM. Ian, welcome to SNNLive.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you on the program. So for our audience that may not be familiar with the story, let's get an overview of the company.
Okay, so we are working on stem cells, a particular kind of stem cells, which are neuronal stem cells. So these are stem cells that help repair disorders in the central nervous system. We have conducted a number of clinical studies, and right now we are focused on using these neuronal stem cells for treatment of chronic spinal cord injury. There are many other indications that we can be looking at. We have recently put another indication, dry AMD, on hold so that we can focus on our spinal cord injury program. We are in the middle of a phase 2 study right now, and getting positive data from this controlled phase 2 study will not only allow us to determine that we have a therapeutic for spinal cord injury, but will show us that our platform can be applied to other CNS disorders for which there are currently no therapeutic treatments.
Okay, so let's unwrap this a little bit. I want to start with, I want to know where the company came from. Where did it develop? Or where was the science developed?
So the company was actually founded by Irv Weissman, who is a professor at Stanford now. And he and his team were responsible for discovering, for the first time, human central nervous system stem cells. These were isolated from fetal brain tissue and characterized by the company in preclinical models. So preclinical models of eye indications, of brain indications, and we found that these cells had the ability, once they were transplanted into the brain or the central nervous system, they self-renew, they engraft into the tissue, they migrate, and they differentiate. That is, they become cells of the nervous system, so neurons, astrocytes, and oligodendrocytes. And so from that knowledge, we then projected that we could use these for repairing various disorders of the central nervous system. And that's what we have been working on over the last number of years. It started out being a very slow process. These were novel cells that we projected, once transplanted into the brain, would remain there for many years. And so when we first started, the FDA was very cautious. We had to go through dosing one patient, waiting 6 months to see how they responded, and then we could dose another patient. Now we're at a stage where the FDA is accepting this more as a biologic, and we're able to move rapidly through clinical studies.
Okay, so what I want to know is, how is what you're developing potentially supposed to start with spinal cord injuries? So can you expand on that?
So let me tell you a little bit about spinal cord injury. So there are about 1.3 million people in the United States that have a spinal cord injury. A little over 50% of those have either a partial or complete quadriplegia, which means that they have limited or no use of their arms or legs. So this is a very debilitating disease, as I'm sure you can understand. It's basically caused by, when you damage the spinal cord, you interfere with the electrical transmission of the signals down the spinal cord. So our cells are able to go in, we transplant them directly into the spinal cord around the margins of the injury, and they are then, based on preclinical models, they release various factors which are neurotrophic, help the neurons regrow. They're able to remyelinate the neurons in the spinal cord, and potentially able to differentiate into neurons to actually knit back together the damage which has been done by the spinal cord trauma.
So you're developing the therapeutic then, is that correct?
Correct, yes. We're developing these stem cells as a therapeutic for treating chronic spinal cord injury.
So where's the company currently at in the clinical development?
So we are currently in a phase 2 study in chronic cervical spinal cord injury. So let me just unpack that a little bit. We first completed a study in thoracic spinal cord injury. You know the difference between thoracic and cervical?
Please explain for our audience.
Okay, so cervical is up here in the neck region, and this is where there are segments which control your motor function. The thoracic is down in your back area, and that's what controls more of the sensory function below the waist. So we completed a study in thoracic spinal cord injury patients, in which we showed that 7 of the 12 patients had restored sensory function below the level of injury after our treatment. But for spinal cord patients, what they're mainly interested in is being able to move their upper extremities. So we have started now a study in chronic spinal cord injury. We're in phase 2. That study had 3 cohorts. The first cohort was an open label study, so we knew everybody was getting the dose. That was used largely as a safety study because this was the first time anybody had transplanted cells above the level of injury in the cervical spinal cord. Those patients we were able to follow, and we were able to show that 4 of those 6 patients had an improvement in their motor function 6 months after transplantation of the cells. So we're now in a single-blind randomized controlled study, which is in 40 patients. We're approximately 1/3 enrolled in that study. We're anticipating that the study will complete enrollment by the end of third quarter of this year. The patients will be treated or followed for 1 year, so we'll get the final data from this study in the second half of 2017. We will get further data on the open label cohort for 12 months in the second quarter of this year, and we'll be doing an interim superiority analysis in the second half of this year. So basically, we are on track to get definitive data to show whether this therapy works by the end of next year, and that's really going to be a transformational event for the company.
Okay, so you mentioned this part a little bit in the overview, but I want to expand upon it. What's the size of the spinal cord injury market?
So right now, there are no real treatments for spinal cord injury. There are about 1.3 million people in the United States that have a spinal cord injury. It's estimated, as I said, over half of these are quadriplegics. So they need care, assistance, and it's estimated that overall the cost to the healthcare system, lost days of work, etc., is $40 billion a year. We're projecting that a therapeutic will have a market potential of at least $1 billion a year, conservatively. And again, there's currently no therapeutic options for these people. And it's important to recognize that most of these patients get their cervical spinal cord injury early in life, in their 20s, because these are driving accidents, diving accidents, etc. And they live and they have a fairly normal life expectancy. So they live with this condition for many years. And we're talking about creating a therapy which, with one treatment, will help restore motor function to those patients.
Would it be for the treatment, would it be a one-time treatment, or would they have to come back and do a multiple?
We're currently projecting that it'll be a one-time, lifetime treatment. We've shown that these cells, when they're transplanted into the human brain, will survive for at least 6 years and probably longer. So we anticipate that they will go into the spinal cord, they'll self-renew, they'll live there for a long time, and they'll continue to support the damaged area of the spinal cord. So one-time treatment.
And will it be reimbursable?
We don't know that at the moment, but we assume that it will be reimbursable. We haven't priced this at this point, but I think you can imagine that if you have a one-time treatment which allows patients to be more independent, have a better quality of life, and it cuts into that $40 billion healthcare system, that it will be something that will be reimbursed by the healthcare providers.
Okay, so what I want to know also is, what's your background? How did you get into this company?
So my background, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 30 years. I am a chemist by training. I started out my career in industry at a company called Syntex. I then became part of the Roche organization. I became head of research and development for Roche in Palo Alto. I then decided to start up my own company in the CNS area, which I did. That was successful, was sold to a public company. I worked for a venture capital group for a period of years. And then in March of last year, this opportunity came along. I was very intrigued by the science, by the quality of the science, by the preclinical data, and by the fact that this company is now in a stage where it's getting very close to getting pivotal data. And so although I had no background per se in stem cells, I was really intrigued and grasped the opportunity. I joined as Chief Operating Officer and I became Chief Executive Officer in January of this year, and having a great time doing it.
Okay, so speaking of being in 2016, from what you can tell me, what are some of the goals and milestones for this year, in the near term and long term?
So the near-term milestones are, first of all, we will complete enrollment in our phase 2 study by the end of third quarter. We will then also get the 12-month data for our first cohort of patients. This will allow us to see if the effect is getting larger in going from 6 to 12 months, or how it's evolving. And then we will also do an interim analysis of superiority, which could lead to the early termination of the study because we're seeing such robust effects. We don't anticipate that, so then those patients that are enrolled will continue for 1 year, and we'll have the final analysis of the data in the second half of 2017.
So where can our audience go and find more information about the company?
You can go and look on our website, which is StemCells.com, or you can go and look at the Pathway study, which is the name of the phase 2 study that we are currently enrolling in. And I would encourage anybody that has a spinal cord injury to go and look at that Pathway website and see if this is a study that you would like to participate in.
My name is Robert Kraft, and I'm coming to you live on SNNLive, and we're here at the Source Capital Group 2016 Disruptive Growth and Healthcare Conference in New York City. With me again is Ian Massey from StemCells, Inc. The symbol is STEM. Thank you so much for coming on to SNNLive.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.